My name is Sarah Miller. I'm 34 years old, and I'm a senior marketing manager at Meridian Solutions. It was a Tuesday morning, a day that started like any other, but ended in a way I could never have imagined. I was sitting at my desk, the fluorescent lights humming above me, trying to focus on the Q3 performance report. A dull ache had started in my lower back an hour earlier, a familiar, unwelcome sensation that had been a silent companion through 2 previous early miscarriages. I knew what it meant. My hands trembled slightly as I typed, a cold sweat breaking out on my forehead. I had to get home. I needed to get home. I pushed back from my desk, my chair scraping loudly on the polished concrete floor, and walked towards Mark's office. Mark Jenkins, my manager, was on the phone, his voice a low rumble. He gestured for me to wait. When he finally hung up, he looked at me, impatient. "Everything all right, Miller? That Q3 report isn't going to write itself." I swallowed, my throat suddenly dry. "Mark, I need to go home. I'm not feeling well. I think I might be having a miscarriage." His face, usually a mask of corporate efficiency, didn't even flicker. He just stared at me, then glanced at his watch. "Sarah, I understand this is difficult, but that Q3 report is crucial for the board presentation this afternoon. It needs to be finalized and uploaded by noon. You're the only one with all the numbers. Can you at least finish that before you leave?" The words hung in the air, a demand disguised as a question. I felt a wave of nausea, not just from my body, but from the sheer, cold indifference in his tone. My eyes burned, but I refused to let tears fall. Not here, not in front of him. I just nodded, my voice caught in my throat, and turned to walk back to my desk. I knew in that moment that this wasn't just about a report. This was about something much larger, something that would eventually force the entire company to look at itself in a way it never had before. To understand why I didn't just walk out, you need to know a little about my history at Meridian Solutions, and with Mark. I'd been with the company for 7 years, starting as a marketing coordinator and working my way up. I loved my job. The fast pace, the creative challenges, the satisfaction of seeing a campaign succeed, it all fueled me. I was known for my dedication, for being the one who always met deadlines, who stayed late when needed. Mark had been my manager for the last 3 years. He was a driven man, obsessed with metrics and results, and he saw any personal issue as a distraction from the bottom line. He'd often say, "We're not here to make friends, we're here to make money." My husband, David, and I had been trying to start a family for 4 years. We'd faced heartache twice before, both early miscarriages, each one a quiet, agonizing loss that I'd grieved mostly in secret, returning to work quickly, throwing myself into projects as a way to cope. I'd never told Mark about those losses. I'd learned early on that any hint of vulnerability was seen as weakness in his book. He had a way of making you feel expendable, like a cog in a machine that could easily be replaced if it dared to malfunction. He never directly denied a sick day, but he'd imply that your absence would cause a catastrophic ripple effect, making you feel guilty for even considering it. He'd once told a colleague, "If you're too sick to work, you're too sick to check your email, right? So don't expect things to be waiting for you." The implication was clear, even on your deathbed, you should be connected. That morning, the pain intensified with every minute. I could feel the telltale cramping, the cold dread spreading through me. I sat at my desk, hunched over my keyboard, my vision blurring at the edges. I put my head down for a moment, resting it on the cool, smooth gray river stone I kept on my desk, a small comfort, a reminder of a peaceful hike David and I had taken years ago. It was my anchor. I focused on the numbers, on the graphs, on the precise language of the report. I typed with one hand, pressing the other against my abdomen, trying to will the pain away, trying to will my body to just hold on. I managed to finish the report, every word a struggle. I uploaded it at 11:58 a.m., 2 minutes before the deadline, and immediately emailed Mark. Q3 report submitted. Going home now. I didn't wait for a reply. I walked out of the office in a daze, the fluorescent lights seeming to hum louder, the sounds of my colleagues' chatter fading into a distant buzz. The drive home was a blur of pain and tears. David met me at the door, his face etched with worry. He took me to the emergency room, where the doctors confirmed what I already knew. Another loss. Another life that never got the chance to begin. I spent the next few days in a haze of physical discomfort and profound grief. Mark sent one email 2 days later, not asking how I was, but simply, "When can we expect you back? Need your input on the Q4 strategy." The following week, I returned to work. Mark didn't mention my absence, didn't ask if I was okay, didn't offer a single word of condolence. It was as if I'd just been on a routine vacation. He immediately piled on new tasks, expecting me to pick up exactly where I left off, without missing a beat. The Q3 report, which had cost me so much, was barely mentioned. It was a cold, hard slap to the face. David was furious. He wanted me to quit, to report Mark to HR, to sue the company. But I was still reeling, still processing the loss, and the thought of fighting felt too overwhelming. I just wanted to disappear into my work, as I always had. But something had shifted inside me. This time, the silence, the utter lack of humanity, felt different. It wasn't just another personal tragedy, it was a profound betrayal by someone who was supposed to be a leader. I started noticing things I'd previously dismissed as Mark being Mark. I saw him dismiss a young father's request for flexibility to attend his child's school play, implying his commitment was wavering. I heard him make a snide comment about a colleague taking too many mental health days after a family illness. He'd often schedule critical meetings for 5:30 p.m. on Fridays, knowing it would disrupt weekend plans, and then praise those who stayed, subtly shaming those who had prior commitments. One afternoon, I overheard a conversation between Mark and another manager, Brenda, in the break room. Brenda was complaining about a new company-wide wellness initiative. "It's all fluff," Mark scoffed. "If people want to be well, they should just work harder. Stress is a motivator. This company is getting soft, Brenda. We need people who can handle the pressure, not people who need a nap." He then added, "And HR? They're just there to make sure we don't get sued, not to coddle anyone. They're more or less my personal cheerleaders when it comes to keeping targets high." His words hit me like a punch. It confirmed my fear, HR would be useless. Going to them would just be another dead end, another humiliation. I started keeping a quiet record. Not a formal log, just a simple document on my personal laptop, listing dates and specific incidents involving Mark and other colleagues. I noted the email exchange where he demanded the Q3 report, my doctor's note confirming my hospital visit and subsequent need for time off, and the curt email asking when I'd return. I also started collecting the company's official policies on leave, employee well-being, and management conduct. It was all public information, easily accessible on the internal portal. I wasn't sure what I was building, but I knew I couldn't just let it go. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about a pattern of behavior that was toxic and, I suspected, a significant liability for Meridian Solutions. David was my rock during this time. He listened, he raged on my behalf, and he gently pushed me to consider my options. "Sarah," he said one evening, "you're one of the best. This isn't just about you being sad. This is about him treating you like you're disposable. That's not okay. You deserve better, and so does everyone else he does this to." His words resonated. I realized I wasn't just grieving a personal loss, I was also grieving the loss of my belief in a fair workplace, a place where basic human decency was a given. My competence, my dedication, had been exploited, and that felt like a violation. I knew I couldn't go to HR. And I couldn't just confront Mark, he would dismiss me, twist my words, and probably find a way to make me look like the problem. I needed to approach this from a different angle, one that spoke his language, risk. Meridian Solutions had recently launched a major employee empowerment and inclusivity initiative, complete with glossy brochures and internal campaigns. It was a big deal for their public image and investor relations. I remembered reading an article about Eleanor Vance, one of the independent board members, who had a strong background in corporate ethics and a reputation for advocating for employee welfare. She was a formidable woman, not easily swayed by corporate jargon. I decided to bypass the usual channels. I drafted a concise, professional email to Eleanor Vance, requesting a brief, confidential meeting to discuss a sensitive personnel matter with potential operational and reputational implications for the company. I didn't mention Mark or the miscarriage directly in the email. I just stated that I believed the issue was urgent and warranted her attention as a board member committed to the company's stated values. I attached a copy of my resume, highlighting my long tenure and consistent performance, to establish my credibility. I sent it late on a Friday afternoon, hoping it would catch her eye over the weekend. To my surprise, Eleanor's assistant called me Monday morning, scheduling a meeting for Wednesday. I spent the intervening days meticulously organizing my notes. I printed out the email exchange with Mark, my doctor's note, and the relevant sections of the company policy. I didn't want to present a sob story. I wanted to present a clear case of a manager creating a toxic work environment and exposing the company to significant risk. I focused on the facts, the specific demands, the timing, the lack of support, and the pattern of behavior I had observed in others. I highlighted the discrepancy between Mark's actions and the company's public commitment to employee well-being. When I sat across from Eleanor Vance in her executive office, a quiet space with large windows overlooking the city, I felt a strange calm. She was exactly as I imagined, sharp, attentive, and direct. I laid out my story, starting with the Q3 report and my miscarriage, detailing Mark's demand that I finish the work. I spoke calmly, professionally, letting the facts speak for themselves. I showed her the email, the doctor's note, and then presented the pattern of Mark's behavior with other employees, citing specific instances and dates from my notes. I didn't accuse him of malice, but of a systemic failure to manage with basic human consideration, creating a culture of fear that ran directly counter to Meridian's stated values. This isn't just about my personal experience, Ms. Vance, I concluded, though that was devastating. It's about a manager who is actively undermining employee morale and creating significant legal and reputational risk for Meridian Solutions, especially in light of our new employee empowerment initiative. Eleanor listened without interruption, her expression unreadable. When I finished, she picked up my printed materials, her gaze lingering on the email from Mark. "Thank you, Sarah," she said, her voice low. "This is serious. Very serious." She told me she would need to verify some details, but that she would bring this directly to the attention of the full board. She assured me of confidentiality for as long as possible, but warned me that once the board was involved, things would move quickly. I left her office feeling a mix of exhaustion and a quiet, unfamiliar sense of empowerment. I had done it. I had spoken my truth. 2 days later, on a Friday afternoon, the entire company buzzed with whispers. An urgent, all-hands email had been sent out, announcing that the board of directors had called an emergency meeting, effective immediately. Mark Jenkins was conspicuously absent from the office. Later that day, an internal memo circulated, stating that Mark had been placed on administrative leave pending an internal investigation into his management practices. I was asked to provide a more detailed statement to an independent HR investigator, which I did, calmly and factually, presenting all my documentation. Other colleagues, emboldened by the news, also came forward with their own stories. The emergency meeting was a direct result of Eleanor Vance's intervention. She had presented my case, framed as a critical risk management issue, to the board. The potential for a lawsuit, the damage to the company's carefully crafted public image, and the blatant contradiction of their new initiatives had shocked them. They couldn't afford to ignore it. The investigation lasted several weeks. Mark was eventually removed from his management position, reassigned to a non-managerial role in a different department, far from any direct reports. He lost his seniority, his team, and his influence. I heard he was furious, but he had no leg to stand on. The evidence of his pattern of behavior, combined with my specific complaint, was overwhelming. I didn't feel triumphant. There was no joy in seeing someone fall, even if they deserved it. The loss of my baby still weighed heavily on me, a quiet ache that would never fully disappear. But there was a profound sense of justice, a feeling that I had finally stood up for myself, and for others. My department got a new manager, a woman named Clara who fostered a supportive and respectful environment. She actually encouraged work-life balance and checked in on her team. It was a stark contrast to Mark. I still keep the smooth gray river stone on my desk. It's no longer just a comfort object, a silent anchor in times of pain. Now, it's a reminder of the quiet strength I found within myself, the resilience that allowed me to speak up when it felt impossible. It reminds me that even in the face of profound loss and injustice, a single voice can sometimes shift the current.